Hello YouTube family, James Green, Short Serious Shenanigans. So, we have today, this is going to be the first episode in however many long it takes, because I'm going to do the whole thing on camera. Now, what I did prior to, you guys saw the unboxing video. So what I did in between then and now was I took time to read through the manual that comes with it, okay? And when you open up the capacitor box, there's this piece of paper inside, okay? Take time, read through everything, trust me. Even if you guys do this for a living, and us guys, you know, oh, we'll worry about the directions later. You know what? There's a lot of money involved here, and depending on your application, and they tell you specifically, you know, you glance at this, but here in the manual, depending on your specific application and how to ensure that, number one, you have the correct wiring size that's going to be supplying the idler motor, as well as that you have the correct circuit breaker. Now, for me, in my house, we don't have an electric stove. We've always had a gas stove. But when they built the house, they built it with a 60 amp 220 single phase breaker. Now, it's wired to go to the stove. Now, I had an electrician buddy of mine come off when I started this venture to turn the garage into my man space. So those wires are actually disconnected that go to the stove. Again, done by a licensed electrician, and he helped me in a sense build the 220 single phase stuff that's in here. Now, they give you a little formula in the book. Read through it, understand it, know it. Very, very good manual, very thick cardstock. So I like that because, you know, greasy hands. Sometimes we get manuals and they're on really like thin paper like this that fall apart. Now, I'm one of those people that I like to, anytime I get a manual, I like to be able to put it in a 3-ring binder or document protectors. It comes stapled, which is nice, because what I'm going to do is I've already got document protectors in a 3-ring binder for future reference. When I get done, I'm going to put this in a 3-ring binder, because as you go through here, it gives you all the basic lawyer speak, an overview. Again, before you start trying to hook things up, read through. Take about an hour of your time or more. Read through it, understand it, know it. That way, depending on your application, they give you formulas in there to judge, okay, how big is my wire? What load do I have? Now, for me, I'm running right now, currently, a 1 horsepower motor, and it's wired to run off of 230 volt. Now, it can be wired to run off 480 or 460, according to whatever the tag says, depending on how the legs are set up. But this one is wired to where it'll run off 220 3-phase. Okay, so I know that from previous experience, and the wire that I have that runs over here is large enough. I have purchased some really heavy, this was for the other rotary phase converter, which I needed to anyway. You guys remember me talking about in other videos. The cord that was on here that went from the switch to the junction box on the back was really, really, really short. And so this is a 10-foot piece of number 10 4-strand wire. This will definitely handle everything that we're going to do. This is the size gauge wire that's going to come from our capacitor box up to the switch. So this wire here, okay, is going to be handling the 3-phase power. And again, when I had my electrician friend over here the other day, and we were working on trying to get that other rotary phase converter checked out, and it didn't work, but he verified, yes, this is more than good enough to handle what we're going to be doing, this gauge wire. And subsequently, when I do get the surface grinder, and it'll sit generally back here, This is all going to get moved around, but it'll sit right here next to the mill. Okay, it'll be set right next to it. I've got enough space here and everything. It's going to be a big adjustment, you'll see. But this gauge wire will be heavy enough because we're not doing long, 50, 60 foot runs. And they explain in here, I won't go into detail, but you guys, if you get one, they explain in there the formulas to determine, okay, let's say for instance you're at the bash and you win that big phase converter that can set outside. Now that would be nice to have one. I'd set it outside, and you wouldn't even outside. They're not loud. I mean, I heard the one Brian Block ran. It's pretty quiet. So doing a long run like that, it would definitely be longer than 50 foot worth of power cable. So you'd have to make sure you follow the guidelines in here. Now, there are a couple of different applications, and I'll try to cover all this stuff in this first segment before we start going through building and everything. Depending on your setup, you can either, and you probably see it online, you guys see where they have the capacitor box mounted right on top of the idler. Now, they don't have to be. You can actually mount the idler, and it comes with its own isolation feet. They specifically tell you, they provide these feet, they specifically tell you, do not bolt the idler straight down to, let's say, I've got my wooden stand. You don't want to do that. And they explain in the book, again, read the manual, that you need to put these isolation feet, don't strap it down. The reason is because as a motor starts up, you need to allow for basically in a layman's terms, if you allow it to vibrate and do what it needs to do, it makes the bearings last longer in the motor. It needs to have some place for it to vibrate and give, hence the little isolation feet. So these actually will do the whole install on camera. I'm going to mount the box on the wall, okay, which is going to be up separate, and I'm going to manufacture me a shield that will make sure that chips or any possible wild mishap of coolant that might fly around behind, that we won't, we want to make sure we eliminate that. So we're not going to have to use the big disconnect box that I have. So I've removed that off of the mill. It's out of the way. So we'll go ahead and get started. Now I have just opened up the capacitor box here just to look at. Okay. Now all I've done is I've pulled the screws off, and it's put together very nicely as far as there are 6 screws. Okay, you're going to get 2 on each side, 2 on the top, and then 2 on the bottom, or the other side. Okay. For future reference, I'm going to refer to this as the bottom, okay, because when it mounts on the wall, obviously bottom. Now they do come with a kit, and that's what these are for, okay. People have probably asked, why are these studs so long? They have a kit you can actually mount, and they show it in the manual there. So in case you wanted to mount this directly on top of the idler motor, you could. That is a possibility. Me, I'm going to wire in here. I've got my strain connectors already on my cable, so we're going to go in here, buy the book, and we'll get it set up, and we'll install the feet on the motor. Okay, that'll be one of the other things we do first. Out of the way. Oh man, I'm still sore. So we open it up carefully, and like I said, they have videos online that break it down in very basic, simple layman's terms of where to wire everything up. Now, for future reference, you always, this is, to my knowledge, these have been discharged, okay, so, but I'm still not going to reach out there and touch the capacitors because I don't know for a fact there's still a charge on the capacitors. I presume it's always hot, but you know, you just got to be careful like it is with anything. It did come with something here, I'm not sure what this is, that's zip tied in here. So we'll first have you a pair of side cutters handy. Let's cut that and see what this is. Okay. Everything has been very, very nicely packaged in this. Okay. We have got some fasteners, some mounting fasteners in here. Okay. Looks like some 4/4 20 bolts and some locking nuts with star washers on them. Okay, so we will hold on to those up here. Again, depending on your application, you may or may not need certain items. Now, as we talked about earlier, everything was already laser cut, and we're going to go through and do our knockouts according to what we need to mount stuff on here. Now, I'm going to do something unique as far as when I go to mount mine, and we'll go ahead and do that right now before we get this mounted, is what we're going to do next. Let me go ahead and put this cover back on here. And this cover on. What I'm going to utilize is, there is a piece of wood, as you guys remember in the other video. I'll try to get this where you can see. And okay. Alright. So, in the other video, this was the piece of wood that came with, okay, the phase converter. So, you know me, I always like to repurpose stuff. And so, even though it had that little area where it was kind of sprung, this is really strong stuff. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to reutilize, and we're going to mount the control box back here. Now, I know for a fact there is no electrical in this part of the wall here. There's no plumbing, but you got to be aware of that. Move this out of the way so it doesn't flood things out. So I do know from past experience, and you can see where the nails are or where the stud is, and they're 2 foot apart here. Okay. I'm going to have the box primarily back here, and I've already dug out some good fasteners here that are long. We get 3 of them, and essentially we're just going to put them right into the middle of this here and we'll get it started. So we're going to actually, because I can see right where the divot, where the sheetrock screws went in, we're just going to go right there. Yeah, you can hear that go in. All right. This is definitely not going to go anywhere. Alright, so we're going to use that as our backer material that our box is going to mount on. Now I know that that's going to be high enough, and when I do my coolant work or splashing materials, it's up high enough, because as you can tell, and I took this into consideration to determine how high to set it, you can see from previous work how kind of, when you're running a fly cutter, how material and oils and coolants can splatter about that height, okay, and material and stuff. That's why we're going to make sure when we put that in the back, we are still going to, I'm going to put some, an enclosure where it's still cool enough, but to make sure I don't get chips in any of that idler motor. So the next thing we're going to do, we will go down here and we will go ahead and let's get us a hammer ready. And it's already got laser knockouts in the back for even your fasteners to go through. They really thought this out whenever they put this together. So I'm just going to use a little punch here. And so before I get carried away putting a bunch of other knockouts, or knocking out a bunch more, I'm going to look here. And you got to get the light just right, and then you can see them. Okay, they're in the four corners is the ones I'm going to go ahead and knock out. Real light, easy. And I'll pull them out with pliers from the other side. Oh, that's not it. I thought it was. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So, all right. Those four, that's how easy they knocked out. Now, we know this is the bottom, okay? And I already have this is my pigtail, okay? Even though it's got four wires, this was some wire I had purchased quite a while back whenever I got my air compressor and welder. So even though I know for a fact it's just these three wires that are used, the black wire is not hooked up for anything. Again, this is two-phase, or correction, this is 220 single phase. This black wire is not connected to anything in that plug. I know that for a fact. I just need to go ahead and cut it and get rid of it. And I'm going to tape all this up a little bit more. We'll make it look pretty when we get done. When I had this the other day and opened all this up, it was basically, let's do the basic wiring up to find out, to make sure it even works before we get carried away with everything else. So, go ahead and trim some of this off here. We'll actually go through and do the proper taping and securing of everything. So, this is a pretty nice strain connector here. Unless you all have ever seen these before, the way to get these to release is, and they're pretty neat. They're almost kind of like the old finger trap. So if you see these on some old cables, you go to pull, they're not going to come off. The trick to them is, okay, push here, then you push up with these two and you expand it, okay, and then you hold it. Once it's expanded, then you can move it around anywhere on the cable you want, okay, and then when you get it where you want, you just let go. Now it'll always push in, but when you go to pull back, you can't. So those are handy. So I want to make sure I leave myself plenty of slack. And we know we have to use bust out that size strain connector, or the knockout for the strain connector. Let's take a look here and see which side our two-phase load is going to come in from. Now, according to the manual, and again, I like the fact that this is a nice thick cardstock. Okay, they show you in here on one of the pages here the basic breakdown, and it looks exactly like it's a picture. Let's turn the camera down. Sorry about that. It is a picture, an exact picture of what you see inside of here. So there's no hand drawing. How many times have we run across something that there is a stick figure drawing? Nope, that's an actual photograph, exactly the same. Everything's labeled. They tell you exactly where everything goes. So you have your two lugs on this side, which is going to be your single phase input, which is going to be this. And then they show you your three-phase output. And then over here, it comes to your idler. So we know on this side is where we need to do our knockout for this. You got to be careful we do not mess up our switch or anything. See, that got dinged a little bit in shipping, but that's okay. It gives it character. So that is going to fit. No, it looks like it'll fit that way. Yeah, could fit that. It honestly looks like it'll fit that. Let's see. Yep, that size. All right. Knocked it out. Twist right out. Wires go in. There we go. Now I'm going to feed a little more in. You got your nuts handy. I'll try to show you guys here. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, I will turn it sideways so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so make sure you always have your nuts, your lock nuts, that the little barbs go down so they can dig into the metal. Now, I'm only going to put the pigtail on with this on the ground just because, you know, we're not going to plug it in yet or anything, but I am going to true up my wires, and I am going to look into, and I'll have to take the plug back apart to make sure that I remember what color, what leg is what color here for the input 1 and input 2, or L1 and L2, and then you have your ground, which is your ground load. So there we go with that. That was pretty easy. Again, they have a video online, a couple of them that shows everything. Pretty simple. And this is where it gets challenging. I'll get someone else to give me a hand and help hold this up here while I fasten it to the wall so I don't drop anything. If you wanted to, and I may do it, is I may take that switch out so that I can remove the cover, disconnect the wires here, and slide the switch out, if it'll come out. If not, I'm not going to force it. But we'll go ahead and set that there. This is where you're going to have another person to help you hold it up and put it on. So far. All right. Pretty basic and easy so far. I like the fact that the knockouts, I mean very gently, even the larger one, and they show this on the video, literally tap, tap, they come right out. Now I'm going to go off camera, make sure I remove those small little bitty knockouts because we don't want pieces of metal floating around in that case. I'll get someone to help me hold this up because you don't want to try to do it one-handed and everything. And I don't know if I'm going to try to pull that switch out or not. I don't want to mess with anything to cause an issue. But you know, if you can disconnect those wires and have the lid setting separately, maybe a quick disconnect, and I'll look at it more. But maybe if there's a quick disconnect, so one person doing this, you can hold it up on the wall and put the fasteners in. And we're going to be fastening it to the OSB. So there you go. We've been able to use the piece of wood that came with the idler motor to mount the capacitor box. So you know me, I always like to reuse stuff. So there is episode 1. Again, it's an exact picture in the book. So far, everything I've read, very, very easy to understand. So if you are not an electrician or you have basic working knowledge of electricity, so far everything that I've seen in the manual is very, very simple. I'm excited. You know, so far the only thing I've run into is just, you know, I hate getting up and down off of my knees. It hurts. Bothers the old back, but that's fine. We'll go through again. Make sure you read through the manual entirely. Now, the way I like to do things, and I probably will just to refresh my memory before I get into it, to make sure I don't mess anything up, I always like to double check myself, okay? Because sometimes, you know, we have a different way of getting things to stick in our brain, and I'm that way. I'm one of those people. We all learn differently. Some people can glance at it, photographic memory, and, you know, they're like a walking computer. They can remember it. Me, not so much. But, so there we go. Everything so far with the all-purpose CNC heavy-duty ADX rotary phase converter. We'll go through in the next video, and we'll already have the box mounted on the wall. Okay, that's all. Everything else I'm going to do on camera. There's no sense in you guys watching me struggle try to mount a box on a wall. I mean, I know it would be enjoyable for some of you guys, but honestly, so there we go. Episode 2 going to be next. Don't know when I'm going to film it. I got some stuff I got to do, but live and unedited. The only thing I'm going to do is mount the box on the wall. So until next episode, you guys be safe. Take care of yourself and take care of your family, because remember, at the end of the day, you and your family is all you got. Thanks again, American Rotary. You guys be sure I'll have information down in the description box to contact them on all of these videos. If you have any questions, shoot them an email, call them, and well, let's see. So far I'm liking it. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.